Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Traumatized. Today's the third mini episode that I have this week, and it is about exploring the relationship between childhood trauma and empathy. While several studies have found a significant relationship between childhood trauma and empathy during childhood, it is still not clear which way the relationship goes. Some studies have found that childhood trauma makes adults more likely to be empathetic, while other results show that childhood trauma is associated with less empathy. Childhood trauma and increased empathy. In 2018, Greenberg published a research paper that explored empathy levels among adults, some who had experienced childhood trauma and some who had not. They found that in two different samples, adults who had experienced trauma in their early years tended to have higher levels of empathy than those who had not, particularly effective empathy. What's more, people who had experienced more severe trauma were more empathetic than those who survived less severe events. While their research didn't address the psychological mechanisms behind this relationship, the authors offer some ideas. They suggest that increased attentiveness to emotions in the aftermath of traumatic experiences may improve people's ability to recognize and understand emotions. They also recognize that many factors may affect the pathway from a traumatic event to changes in empathy, including biological factors and external events, such as support from others. Further research should explore how these pathways might work. The authors suggest that their results fit into other research surrounding trauma, empathy, and compassion. Previous studies have found that people who have suffered difficult life events are more likely to want to help others, and that this relationship is mediated by empathy. Other studies show that adversity can increase both empathy and compassion for others. Childhood trauma and decreased empathy. Conversely, several research papers have found the opposite result to Greenberg's study, that childhood trauma decreases empathy skills. In 2023, Cerquiera and Almeida found that childhood adversity was associated with lower empathy, as well as more difficulty at recognizing and describing their own emotions. Their results show that, on average, people who had experienced emotional abuse in childhood showed less empathetic concern. Those who experienced physical abuse or emotional neglect found it more difficult to take another person's perspective. Those who experienced emotional neglect found it more difficult to identify their feelings, distinguish them from bodily emotions, and describe the feelings of others. Cerquiera and Almeida's results are supported by other research on empathy and childhood trauma. Studies that have looked into levels of empathy among criminal offenders have found that young people who experienced childhood abuse showed fewer signs of empathy and more psychopathic traits. Other research points to how parental attachments may shape the way empathy develops in the brain. One study found that female adolescents with higher quality attachments to their parents had higher levels of affective and cognitive empathy, and male adolescents had higher levels of affective empathy. Many children who experience trauma have disrupted or dysfunctional relationships with their caregivers, including separation, loss of a parent, neglect, or abuse. This may affect their ability to develop empathy for others. The conflicting results of studies show the need for more research into the relationship between childhood empathy and trauma. The research of both Cerquiera and Almeida 2023 and Greenberg et al. 2018 has certain limitations. Both studies have relatively small sample sizes and a disproportionate amount of female respondents. Greenberg acknowledged that more people in their sample experienced childhood trauma than is expected, raising questions about the subjectivity of each person's experience and what they consider a traumatic event. Further research with larger and more representative samples may help us to gain a clearer picture of the relationship between childhood trauma and empathy. Whatever the relationship of empathy to childhood trauma, as a protective factor that may alleviate some of the negative effects of childhood trauma or as another obstacle for survivors of trauma to overcome. It's crucial that young people and adults who have experienced trauma receive the support that they require. Childhood trauma can have long-term effects on a young person's ability to enjoy and thrive in the world, affecting their mental health and relationships with others into adulthood. In many cases, trauma-focused treatment and other interventions are necessary to help young people heal from trauma and live life to its full. The WAVE Clinic offers transformative recovery programs for young people, supporting them to plan and build better futures. Our whole person approach combines exceptional clinical care with experiences, community work, education, and an international gap year, guiding young people on a journey of self-discovery, skill building, and inner healing. So there. Now, I have no direct evidence or written material to suggest that in some people, significant childhood trauma develops and creates empaths. Now, it's a possibility, and the reason I say this is because my ex-girlfriend is an empath, and she also suffered from severe childhood trauma as a child into her teens. So I can't confirm, obviously, because there is nothing written that proves it that I can tell. But I think if there was further research done into this topic itself, there could be a link to the two, because the fact that there is, according to this study, a possibility that childhood trauma does increase empathy among children in their adult years or even in their childhood years could have some interesting basis for further study and to perhaps create a link between empathy and traumatic events and, well, people who grow up to be empaths. Empaths, unfortunately, it's a lot of horrible times and very traumatic mental issues because of the fact that they are very aware of other people's emotions. They can feel their thoughts and feelings, and have even been told that they can even tell if you are lying or not. So it's something that could be worth looking into for sure in the future if there was scientists or psychiatrists that would be willing to look into this further. Now, a lot of people out there don't necessarily believe in empaths. They think that this is just some hearsay or nonsense that's not really true. But I do have direct, I guess you could say, experience with more than one. I would say probably at least 3 people that I have known who are empaths. And there has been direct proof that was shown to me by my ex-girlfriend, which really convinced me that it is a thing. But I do wonder if she was born as an empath or if the empath was created due to her severe childhood trauma that she experienced as a child. And clearly it was quite severe because she's struggling with it today, even if she isn't willing to admit it to herself. But it is something that is clearly severe and should definitely be studied more. And hopefully one day things will be able to work itself out. And as well, I hope more empaths get the help they deserve and have more clarity and can live more happier and successful lives. All right. That's been episode 3. I hope that you enjoyed this. Stay tuned next weekend for my next full episode. Bye, everyone.